Good morning, guys. Oh, I love the gap up. They got a price target increase. You had really nice earnings from TSM, and then they just had a really nice higher low setup. It was I mean, kind of in a way, it was a lucky ad towards the close yesterday, so that was nice. And then you get the gap up. I mean, fantastic. Hopefully, once we break out of this flat base, this little low cheat setup, it'll be similar to this. Maybe not as clean right now, a little bit more loose, but taking out Tuesday's highs will be a nice look for a potential rally back to an all-time high. AMD's looking great. One of the things that AMD should have stuck out to you yesterday was while the market was falling, AMD was really catching a nice bid. Too late to short SLV? No, it just gave you a lower high. I mean, if you were prepared for it in pre-market, you could have been shorting this VWAP crack in here. So I don't necessarily think and here's the thing. When you say too late to short SLV, are you convinced that SLV is going higher? If you are, then maybe for you mentally it might be too short to short SLV, but at one of these points, I think SLV will be on its backside and the move will be done. And you're going to have plenty of opportunity to short it if you'd like. Yeah, SCCO, it's a copper related name. There is no entry here. I was kind of looking at it as it was trying to build out this base, but it just kind of took off, without me being able to get situated. I was hoping for like one more little pullback and build like, a solid low or a higher low. But it just never happened. So kind of took off without me, unfortunately. What's my view on CoreWeave? You got CoreWeave, you've got NBIS, you've got Iron, you've got Galaxy. I really don't hate the way they're acting. Obviously, this CoreWeave's gapping up overnight. I don't know if I'm chasing a gap up, but the market's nice and strong with the news on TSM. So I don't know that I love it, but it's definitely on my radar. Cypher being another one of those names. I think Cypher is acting pretty decent as well. Not as beaten up, as a CoreWeave, but CoreWeave for now, not bad. Not bad. What are your considerations when drawing trend lines or compare? I mean, I really try not to draw trend lines. I like to draw horizontal lines. Those are my favorite because then it just becomes a good above the line, bad below. So that's kind of how I look at it. Oh, yeah, I like TMC. I actually talked about this one in last night's watch list video. It's doing a really nice job holding up. Really, really nice job for being a little cheapy. Soxel rip this morning. It's got everything to do with TSM. Thoughts on Oklo? Probably one that I would leave alone, honestly. There are much better names than an Oklo right now. What do I think of IONQ? I mean, I almost kind of feel the same exact way. There are better names than an IONQ. I also think even QBTS looks a whole hell of a lot better. How did I do my deep dives? It all starts with recording your trades. If you don't record your trades, it's hard to do a deep dive. You have to deep dive your own executions first. But when you're like kind of studying a new setup, you're doing deep dives on historical winners, right? Look at the biggest moving charts over the last, I would say, since the bottom of 2022. And then you'll have a lot to work with. And then you could also take it one step further. You can even say, since April last year, how did the biggest movers act? How did Palantir act, which is a name that I bought? How did Hood act, which is a name I tried to buy? How did CrowdStrike act? How did Netflix act? How did CLS act? right? All of the biggest and best movers, your Micron, your anything, right? Your quantum names. What did they act like leading up into that correction, during that correction, after that correction, that gave you clues that you should be buying, a Robinhood, right? Goes on to be a big winner. What gave you the clues that you should be buying a Palantir? What gave you the clues that you should be buying and pick your biggest winner, CLS? And that's, it always starts with, when you do a deep dive, what did the biggest movers act like? And normally the biggest clues you're going to get is during a correction, right? Why is that? Because that's when they stand out the most, right? If you're just saying, oh, these names are going up, but so is the market, right? How did I know to buy that? Well, the clues are actually, those seeds are planted during the correction, right? That's when they go into like this phase of relative strength of, they are no longer going down with the market, right? Market's going lower. These stocks are no longer going down, right? That's the telltale sign. Thoughts on ANET? Sloppy. You call this getting tight. I call this pretty sloppy, right? You got to move down and you've got a consolidation going. And yesterday, what'd you do? You rallied right back into the 50 and rejected. So it seems pretty simple for now. You got to at least get above the 50, right? You've got the 50 down sloping, and ANET hasn't really been doing anything for the better part of multiple months. And yet the stock market's at an all-time high. I'll be back on the desk on Tuesday because markets are closed on Monday. What motivates me to stream on YouTube every single day and share your knowledge with you guys? For any of you guys who aren't familiar with some of my story, I spent 18 months locked up before I started trading. And then as soon as I got out from being in prison, I started trading in the hottest market ever, right? I literally went from sleeping on a prison cot to within 12 months of my release having made $1 million, right? And then the next 7-8 months after that, having made another 4 million, right? So it's like I literally went from like the worst life circumstances to some of the best, right? And I, of course, went through hard times just like everybody else in 2022. I struggled trading. I was a new trader. I wasn't boom and bust because I had done so well that, kind of busting that amount of money was nearly impossible. But it really gave me an opportunity to like learn from some people who were much more talented and had much more experience than I did. Then came 2023 and 2024, and those were incredibly simple years for the things that I had then just studied from a Pat Walker, Mark Minervini, Dan Zanger, Christian Koulamagi, Pradeep, etc. Kind of with my own little twist on it, in terms of looking for the strongest when things are weakest, and then looking for the weakest when things are strongest if I want to short, or maybe even playing an overextension, etc. And so, things have gone really well for me. And I feel like one of the easiest ways for me to give back is, and here's the reality, I'm going to be at the desk no matter what, right? Even if I'm not on live stream with you guys, I'm going to be at the desk. So, it just feels like the easiest way for me to give back, because I've been blessed, man. And so you kind of help others and hopefully, you help others and then you get, that same kind of, you get that same kind of return back from, from a higher power. So it's just my kind of way of helping people out. You wouldn't believe how many people will reach out to me privately and ask me, hey, Ariel, do you mentor students one-on-one? And that's probably the most time-consuming thing I can do. This is probably the least time-consuming thing I can do in terms of helping out more than one person. So yeah, ARKG is definitely on my, hopefully that answered it. ARKG is definitely on my radar. I mean, these genomic stocks are starting to act a hell of a lot better. You like BE, so do I. I think a few more days of tightening. I did not buy this thing as it was going through the 50, And that was kind of my mistake. I was literally watching it right through this 107.70s level. I didn't put any on. I don't know that I would have kept it because of the close. I don't know that I would have, kept this because of this close. But, obviously it ended up working out really well. A poor close, you could look at BE and look at how well it worked. And then you can get a poor close and then it closes like Pinduo Duo and it gaps down overnight and you end up getting your ass kicked. So ASTS is on my radar. It's kind of a laggard to PL, Rocket Lab, KTOS, and KRMN, but, it's definitely one worth watching. I have an SILJ short. I've been sitting in SILJ. It's the least stressful in my opinion, right? It's been the one that's been showing relative weakness to the underlying asset, which is silver. So, how do I trade a falling wedge? Usually just a break of the wedge and a prior day high. But in the case of Alibaba, basically a 5-minute opening range break over the 50 simple moving average. In an undercut rally setup, how do you decide whether the optimal 5-minute entry is a VWAP reclaim or a 620? Sometimes they occur in the exact same spot. But I'm looking, here's the important part for me. I'm looking at, let me move my little camera because it sun's coming in through the back. Better. I'm looking at the key level. So where is the UNR level, right? So if I'm looking at that lower left side and price comes into that level, does it happen to align with VWAP and then it starts to cross back up? Or does it happen to wash out below that and then you get your 620 setup and then there's your entry? So oftentimes, the answer could be there's confluence and both of those spots are right there. Sometimes it's just got to get right back up above VWAP because it's right there. Or sometimes it's you go a little bit below VWAP and then you start to curl back up. And then that's kind of the spot that I watch. So it really just depends where the level is on the daily. Right? The important level is the daily level, that low where price comes into to potentially hold. That's the important part. It's not so much what's happening where the spot is on the intraday. It's the horizontal price level from days past. Am I going to re-enter Tesla? Yes, on a move back above the 50 simple moving average. I like AMD. I think it's showing awesome relative strength. I can't really buy it here at the moment. LEU's just chopping around here for right now. I don't really see a super tight spot to buy it, but definitely on the radar. Hood back above the 50 would be a good setup. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I do love how big of a move this has made and the sort of consolidation that is taking place here. But, yeah, we'll see. I'm in no hurry with these names that are underneath the 50 simple moving average. They have to get back above, and then I'll kind of make that determination, whether they're acting well. XLV is nice, man. The XLV ETF is holding in there well. There's a couple of stocks that kind of have my attention. GH, GRAL, and GMed. So these things are just kind of basing pretty well. So, yeah, let's look at BTSG. Oh, man, this thing just continues to chop higher. Yeah, I don't really see a base, though. That's the problem. Looks pretty good, though. NTRA, like it's just in a clean uptrend, but here's a base. Yeah, not bad. Now the real question is, where the hell do we buy this thing? It's a good question. No, so this is kind of how I played Tesla. So, my ads 2 days ago kind of effed up the whole trade. So I bought this as a support gap reclaim. And then I bought a break of prior day high. And then a couple of days ago, I bought the 620 setup against the 50. And then what ended up happening is you get the gap down. I waited for the first 5-minute bar, and then I got stopped out on that first 5-minute bar. So it kind of ruined the trade because of my ads from higher. So I just kind of took it off the table. And in a way, I was kind of happy because it just kind of kept fading off. And now you're dealing with a little bit of a gap up, but it has to gap up above, or it just has to get above the 50 simple moving average. And I'll kind of start myself back in there with the similar idea of, I'm trying to build myself into a bigger move. I bought Palantir? No. Why would I buy Palantir? Yeah, Lily's an interesting one too. Lily's pretty interesting. Thoughts on Lumen? Oh man, I haven't seen this name in a while. Communication sector. I believe this is like an XLC stock. This isn't all that bad. It's just got to get back above the 50. This name obviously showed you the ability to have a really nice move, and it's not like it got completely killed and started to find support around $7.50. Not bad. Not bad. If the XLC names are going to keep going. No, I don't need to use hotkeys. I have them set up, but I don't really use them. How would I learn to trade if I could start over? Same way, same kind of people I learned from before. I would read Bill O'Neill's books. I would study Mark Minervini. I'd study Dan Ryan. I'd study Dan Zanger. I'd study Pat Walker. I'd study Gil Morales. I'd read the books by, or the book by Marcel Link. You read, consume content, but then the reality is like once you've read enough cookbooks, you have to get in the kitchen and start to chop up onions. I've said that before, right? You can only read so many cookbooks from so many different chefs. At some point, you got to get in there and you got to start, putting all the ingredients together and literally putting hours in the kitchen, right? This is me in my kitchen, right? And when I sit here and I study and I track my trades and I take trades and I take losses and I have nice trades and I have shitty losers, right? That's me in the kitchen. So, it's one thing to, it's one thing to read a bunch of books. It's another thing to start applying what you're learning. And if I could start over, I would kind of start the same way I did before, which is, with one singular focus, literally just one singular, this is what I'm doing, and then just do it every day. And I don't know that there are any other humans who think or talk about or look at markets maybe more than me. I mean, unless somebody is literally looking or studying markets for 14, 15, 16 hours a day, then they might be, kind of getting up to what I'm doing on a weekly basis. So yeah, you just got to do it. You just got to study. You got to study how things move. You physically have to put in the hours to look at the biggest movers in the market since the April lows. You have to look at how they were acting during that correction, how they started to act right towards the end of the correction. How did they act immediately after the correction was over? What is the technical setup that you like to trade? How do you buy it? And how do you get in? How do you size it? How do you trail it? How do you trim it, etc.? You have to study all those little pieces to the puzzle. The only quantum name that I would even consider would be QBTS. That's it. No, I just mentioned this one. I kind of butchered the trade by adding on Tuesday. That I had to close it yesterday, unfortunately. So back below the 50 simple moving average, no good. APLD needs to tighten up. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's hanging in there pretty well. And now it's gapping up today. Not terrible. Just needs to finish tightening here. Boeing. Yeah, also needs to tighten. I mean, these things might just keep going, but I don't really buy charts that are just straight up, right? They need to rebase, rebase. For you, it's more important the index QQQ is in a bullish trend or the sector the stock is in. Okay, I prefer the latter, right? Because let's forget about the QQQ for a second, because the XLK, XLY, and XLC are S&P 500 sectors. So forget about the QQQ. Replace that with SPY. I prefer that my underlying asset, the underlying group within the S&P 500, for instance, if the XLY is in an uptrend, or the XLV, let's say, is in an uptrend, if I want to trade healthcare stocks, because the SPY can be in an uptrend, but if I'm trading XLE names and XLE is in a downtrend for energy, then I'm not going to get any kind of traction despite the SPY going up, right? Because the underlying group is acting poorly. Therefore, if I'm trading a particular group, the individual ETF for that group would be nice if there was supportive action within that group. Otherwise, I'm just going to be, kicking myself in the balls trying to get, long a group that's not acting well within the S&P 500. But ultimately, your question was correct. I prefer the individual group to be going up, but you kind of related it to the wrong anchor, which is the SPY, not the QQQ. Do I always use stop loss under low of day? Not always. Sometimes it's under the low of the pivot. I don't really, CJ, I see you asking about LEU. I kind of answered it. I don't really see the spot on LEU just yet. VICR, kind of like a high type flag. Are we a little extended from the 50 though? Yeah, just a little bit. You're about 7 times its ATR from the 50, despite it gapping up. I don't really see a spot for it here. How would I get into ARKG? Really, I don't know that you could have played this as a high or low. I think one of the guys in the room actually bought this as an undercut and rally, is how somebody bought it. Or I don't even remember if it was a break back through the 50 simple moving average as a high or low, right? Here's your low, and then this ends up almost playing out as a UNR and a higher low. Can I explain how I add to a position? Yeah. So I just almost add as if I didn't own it. And what's the other technical setup that I would like if I didn't own it? Would I be comfortable adding to it here? That's like what the thing that I always think. If I didn't own it, could I add to it here? Right? That's the thing that I like to think about. You like HAL for an oil name, so do I. I like SLB. I love my XOM. CVX is starting to act well. BTU is cool. I know some guys bought BTU here, if I'm not mistaken. Just out of this low cheat, we had it on the watch list. Yeah, VRT. I keep thinking that VRT. First of all, I like the relative strength this is showing. I necessarily don't love this price bar. I think getting back through this price bar would be a good idea, 183 and a quarter. But obviously, that's another 8 points higher. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, or do you really just buy it over these prior 2 days highs? Not sure. Back through the 50 simple moving average. Yeah, MDB, unfortunately with MDB, and I think it's a fine stock, is just the issue with software right now. Money is not going to software at the moment, so that's kind of the issue. Yeah, so SILJ, I was just playing as it. So a few days ago, 2 days ago, in fact, silver, let's kind of look at silver first. We were in here 10 times its average true range from the 50, right? So on this day, Tuesday, we were 10 times its ATR from the 50. So I started to get short SILJ, right? And SILJ in this breakdown, right? You kind of reject a pre-market high, right? And then you start to roll over and then you reject VWAP. And I'm kind of getting short throughout this, right? And then the very next day you get the gap up, but you couldn't take out prior day high at the open, and all you do is sell off. So I've been shorting SILJ instead of SLV because this has been showing much more relative weakness versus silver. I haven't been looking for the highs on silver. I've been shorting the asset within silver, that which is the silver miners, which have been a hell of a lot weaker, right? So that's like the important caveat. And really, my stop was just high of day yesterday. And of course, sleeping overnight, it was a little uncomfortable. But then by the time the market open happened, we just rolled off immediately. So, my risk off was effectively the day's high that I shorted. And I really haven't had to do anything with it. So, and all I've done is just tag a couple more in pre-market, very, very small size, just adding on to a nice position that I already have, and any pops in the morning and then failures, I'll be adding some more. You've got to, like I mentioned before, Kenny, you have to read material to help you understand what setups it is that you like to trade. And the easiest thing you can do is you just Google or ChatGPT or whatever the biggest stock market movers since April, over $1 billion market cap, right? The biggest move, or over $500 million market cap, the biggest movers in the stock market since last April, right? And then look at those charts and look at them during the correction, before the correction, after the correction, and literally go bar by bar and say, oh, well, this is a tech name. Let me compare it to the QQQ. How was this name acting against the QQQ during the correction, right after the correction? And what were the clues that this thing didn't want to go lower? One of the big clues for me was in March, the market put in a low. In April, if I'm not mistaken, or late March, you washed out that March low and you had like a bigger washout. A lot of the best stocks, like a CrowdStrike, for instance, didn't really go lower. They just kind of stopped right at that March low and instantly reclaimed it, creating a nice double bottom on the weekly. Those were some of the stocks that were showing best relative strength. That's what should have put them on your radar, right? That's what put CrowdStrike on my radar. That's what put Palantir on my radar. That's what put all of these names on my radar. So hopefully that makes sense. I would consider buying Tesla over prior day high if we can get back through the 50. Yeah. Is it better to scan? Hold on. Is it better to scan group themes by ETFs? Yeah, that's kind of how I like to do it, right? I like to know what group is getting strength. Yeah, I think it would be nice if mega caps could show strength. I think that would be nice. VSAT. Yeah, I'm hoping Tesla can go. Yeah, this VSAT's actually not that ugly, Gavin. It's nice. I really hate these downtrending lines. I thought this day was even nicer too, on the reclaim of the 50. Friday the 2nd. Not bad. Yeah, if you struggle with names with super massive ADR, you just have to size them down. Thoughts on IONQ? I kind of prefer QBTS. QBTS. GMED's interesting. GH is interesting. GRAL is interesting. The 620 setup again is where the 6-period moving average crosses back above your 20 on your 5-minute chart. Gil Morales is who I learned it from. and it's a key level. You don't just, it's not just like any, right? Like it's not a, it's an entry tactic, but your ideas stem from the bigger picture, which is swing trading ideas. And then how do you get involved with a smaller time frame entry tactic, right? When a stock is reclaiming the 50 MA, do you give importance to the slope? Ideally, the slope is up. In an ideal world, the slope is up. Correct. The 6 EMA and the 20 EMA cross from a support level or a level of importance. Yeah. It could be a it could be an area of prior resistance turning into support. It could be a prior level of support that continues to be support. It could be a key moving average, right? So again, and then how do you determine if when you go to put this trade on, it will be a good trade? Well, the answer is how is the group acting? How is the market acting? Where was the aha moment? The first day, January 2022, as a swing trader. Why did I switch from day trading to swing trading? Because it's much more scalable, right? It's basically impossible to have seven-figure winners as a day trader. It can happen, but very, very rare. Meanwhile, with swing trading, it's much more doable. No, I keep being asked about LEU. I just don't see the clean setup at the moment. But these nuclear stocks are acting pretty dang good. I'm not sure if I would trade this here at the moment. I thought this lower cheat setup was even cleaner, like this bottoming pattern here. I don't know if I'm taking this one a little bit higher. Yeah, I like Cypher as a potential reclaim of the 50 simple. Really, for me, it's got to be living over 1831. Hopefully, we get a little bit of a quick morning washout and then a turnaround back through that level, and I'll be focused on it. How does my wife let me work for 12 to 14 hours a day? She gets to be retired. That's how. That's how. She gets to live a life of being a mother. I get to live the life of being a provider. Yeah, VIAV is holding well. Yeah, I think this VIAV is holding up really well. It's just going sideways here. There's nothing wrong with sideways at all, right? Market's been super choppy. This thing has made a massive move and it hasn't fallen apart. That's good. AMD's looking great. Hut looks really strong too. Hut, Cypher, Iron. Hopefully NBIS is coming back. Higher low on General Electric. Yeah, could be. I don't know if this is a name you necessarily want to trade. It might be a little too slow for you. How do I see SEI? I don't even want to look at that one. I got stopped out of it. I think the base is fine, but you just got to break out of the base. ALB looks good to go. Yeah, man, from your lips to God's ears. I'm hopeful that this thing is ready to go. So I put some more on yesterday. Actually, a pretty good example of a 620 setup, guys. So ALAB coming into, and I even said this, I didn't want to add any more ALAB until we got pullbacks into ascending moving averages. So you get a pullback right into the ascending 10-day. And what starts to happen? You begin to base, and then you begin to turn back up. So I added to my ALAB, right? You get your 6 period crossing back above your 20, and there you go. right? Your 6 period crosses back above your 20, it consolidates for just a moment, and then it takes off. So I'm literally adding to my position here, and now I'm getting caught in a gap up. But I was adding with the idea that I would leave at low of day, right? So entry here, stop here, 2%. So, and all I did was add a 5% position. So when you add a 5% position and you have 2% risk, I'm risking 1/10 of 1%. I could take those kind of losses all the time and be perfectly fine. No, AMD's acting great. I didn't cover it. I also didn't buy it. So is PLAB a falling wedge? Not really. Not really. I mean, maybe, but BABA was a falling wedge. Do you think the market will fade once? No, I mean, we're in a bull market and we don't know that money doesn't go into more XLP names. We don't know that the XLC doesn't continue. Maybe home builders continue. Maybe energy names can continue. Maybe crypto stocks can continue. I mean, we don't know. So, asking me what I think is here's the reality. When people ask me what I think, I'm wrong so often that it's not the best trading advice. I mean, I can give you good trading advice, but what I need you to be is somebody who reacts to what is happening. If you say, do you think the market will fade once XYZ? I can give you my opinion and it might be right because, I spent a lot of times formulating opinions, but that doesn't mean that that will translate into good trading advice. What you need is you need a technical setup that you understand. You need to understand what market environment it works in. And you need to be willing to kind of execute that when the conditions are in your favor and react to what it is you're actually seeing. Here's the reality. Money could leave the memory stocks, aerospace and defense, gold and silver, but then it'll go to healthcare names. And yet I might have told you it could go to energy names. You need to be willing to execute the healthcare stocks. Jumia is on the radar, but it's too thin for me, so I can't trade it, unfortunately. So it's on the radar. I just can't buy it. So you need to be somebody who reacts to what is. No, I won't trade this. I already can tell this is just going to be too thin for me. Probably trading like what, $12 million a day or $15 million a day or something. 30 million bucks a day. Still too thin. By about $70 million. Oh man, AMD, so nice. Yeah, I'm sure you probably recognize the relative strength yesterday when it was just refusing to fade when the market was fading. It literally just refused to die at all when the market was fading. Well, it definitely helps when TSM reports some good earnings. AEVA does look great. CRDO, another one, trying to get back above the 50, and then hopefully ALAB, wants to go. Scotland, with you, I bought some more ALAB yesterday. I bought it a few days ago, taking out this little inside day, and then I added a little bit more yesterday as we were starting to turn up end of day. So a little bit lucky. Did I learn bar by bar technical analysis from somewhere? No, just looking at a million charts, dude. You spend 10 hours a day for 6 years looking at charts. You kind of start to realize what works, where it works, and when it works, and how it works, and that's your job. Yeah. If I'm kind of trading around a core position, I do look to trim off into strength 3 to 5 day pushes typically. And then if you're going to add, I personally like adding into ascending moving averages, or after there is a completely new setup, meaning it's digested for 3 weeks, gone sideways 3 weeks. Maybe it had earnings and gapped up on earnings and then gave me like a fish hook or a high volume close setup. So Position sizing. Since I went from day trading to swing trading, how did I overcome the fear of holding overnight? Two things. One, when I buy something, since I like to buy, you got two options. You're buying a pullback into an ascending moving average, which you expect to bounce. And so it has to give you some kind of a bounce towards the end of the day or during the day. Or if I'm buying a breakout, I expect price to actually be breaking out. So therefore, position sizing, kind of helps me limit my losses. And then having some cushion on it while going into the evening helps me control my risk as well. So that kind of eliminates the fear and, just the repetitive nature of doing it. Right. And once you buy a stock and it starts to work for you, and then you buy another, and then you buy another, and then you buy another, you're looking at unrealized gains in 3, 4, 5 stocks. Right. That kind of, starts to put you at ease because you're looking at, a good amount of unrealized gains. Can we buy in an uptrend without a specific setup? Use low of day for a given candle with strong momentum? I mean, you could, right? I mean, I suppose you could, but I'm never going to just buy something that's more than 4 times its ATR from the 50. Do I look the whole day? Yeah, I look for the whole day of entries. I was just literally talking about A-Lab. I bought it at the end of the day. There are times I buy stuff in the middle of the day. There are some times I buy stuff right in the morning. I don't see a setup on APLD, right? I'm looking for tightness. I don't see it yet, right? We're just not tight here. I'm looking for tight. This is almost why I prefer to buy things, at an ascending moving average, right? Look, you're just bouncing off the 100 multiple times. Whoops. You're bouncing off the 100 multiple times, and you get this nice tight day right in here as an inside day. Right? Much tighter buying it here on the second than it is buying it up here. So, no, I stream on Discord through the trading day. Dude, somebody is going nuts on SILJ for the last 25 minutes buying 3 shares at a time. It is the funniest thing on level 2. And it ain't me. Somebody literally just keeps buying 3 shares, 3 shares, 3 shares, 3 shares, 3 shares. It is the funniest thing that I've been watching this entire time for the last 15 minutes. How would I buy Jumia? Maybe as a higher low setup. Yeah, it's a little bounce off the 20, taking out prior day high with your stop at, either today's low of day or the low of the pivot. Right? So if you size in right, you would expect yesterday's low to hold, and you're taking out today's highs. Why A-Lab? Because it kind of reminds me of what it did before. Right? You get this big move up. You get a correction. You start to come back up the right-hand side. You build a new base, and then eventually you break out. Right? Feels very similar to right now. You make that big move up. You get a correction. You start to build a base of higher lows and a flat pivot. And yeah. Also, I don't know if you've looked at A-Lab's earnings and sales. They're phenomenal. I mean, literally phenomenal. If I set a stop 3% away from the entry and the stock immediately starts dropping and drops 1% from your entry, yeah, I would hold it, right? Because the idea is you're supposed to be like, you knew where you were leaving before you got in. Like, let's just say it closed at flat, then maybe you can exit before the trading day is over. But if when you buy it in the morning and you're like, this is where I'm leaving if I'm wrong, right? You can't just start exiting at every 1% wrong, or you're just going to paper cut yourself to death and never really give your stocks a chance to work. You don't get A-Lab? Well, then you got to look at its earnings and sales. Any shorts on the go? Microsoft soon? I don't know, man. Microsoft already broke its 200 simple moving average. I think, if you wanted it, It would have been probably a few days ago against this trend line rejection. Or really after it had this super tight day and then the gap down 2 days ago. Right? Somewhere up here. Right? Something like that. Probably right on this bar here with your stop at high. I mean, look at the risk here. 0.3%. I mean, you kidding me? 0.2%. App Lovin would have been a short 2 days ago against the 20 simple moving average. Galaxy. Oh, yeah. Wow. Guys, I just realized the time. Much love. Got to get myself going. I will not see you guys tomorrow. I will be skiing over the weekend. So hopefully you guys all had or have a nice trading day tomorrow and have yourselves a great weekend. I will see you guys back on the desk on Tuesday because Monday, if I'm not mistaken, markets are closed. So trade them well, be safe, and I'll see you guys in 4 days, I think. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, man.